From the last humble bumble offer for $1 audiobooks, I grabbed the full 18 on offer and decided to take a break from the Horus heresy and check out what's going down 10,000 years later with the Indomitus Crusade. It was a fun book, even though it really demolished what I thought the Necron were about, and so I decided to continue with another. I have gathered a Tyranid army for the tabletop and really enjoyed Angels of Death, to the extent that I'm currently starting a Blood Angels army. So, let's see both my factions in action, and take a listen to the Devastation of Baal, written by Guy Haley and read by the speaker-quakingly powerful voice of Gareth Armstrong. The book opens with civilians on Baal Secundus, one of Baal's 2 moons. These places used to be paradises, lush, verdant, full of life and wonder, but then either over-industrialization or the downfall of humanity reduced them to devastated barren places, deserts just like Baal itself. So we're with this dude who lives with his deceased wife's mum, who's old and infirm but still has her faculties, just isn't physically up for much, and his son, who used to be this reliable, smart and a capable, promising young lad, but then he went and tried to join the Blood Angels. He didn't make the cut and came back broken. He's timid and stupid and pretty much useless, so that now the father is having to work to support all 3 of them with very little help. The dude sells water and has a little compound with sturdy walls, and to protect his big water containers, he does the thing I used to see all the time in England when I was a kid. A layer of concrete atop the wall and broken glass inserted into it to dissuade climbing. I haven't seen it in ages, so maybe they made it illegal or something. Anywho, there's a brutal dust storm raging, and on Baal Secundus, the particles are sharp and toxic, so there's obviously going to be very few people out and about, and the water selling business is going to be in the toilet today. But with 2 dependents, he kicks the son out of bed, and the stepmom rags on him that he should love the boy out of respect for his dead wife, if not for being his biological offspring. Pissed off, he masks up and they head out. Then they come across a Space Marine chaplain who scares the bejesus out of them, because not only that terrifying skeleton skull face mask with the pipes going into the cheeks, but because of his general aura and presence. The chaplain tries to chill them out, and then they notice that there's more Space Marines marching past in the storm. Lots more. More than they've ever seen before. And they have subtle differences in their markings, slightly different colours and such. The dude reckons it's some sort of pilgrimage thing, but then the stepmom sets him straight. This smacks of battle. So, Tyranids from High Fleet Leviathan are making a beeline straight for Baal, and Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, has sent out a call to arms to protect the place Sanguinius called home. There has been a massive response. Successor chapters are sending everyone they can. Tens of thousands are pouring in. And there's successor chapters people haven't even heard of before turning up to defend the chapter planet. Then we're with a Space Marine ship in the void. The Splendid Pinion is a strike cruiser, the same class as the Sword of Baal. This one is manned by the Angels Excelsus, and Captain Irwin is patrolling the area looking for any Tyranid forces. They are itching for combat, and some want to return to Baal to be part of the defence rather than floating around out here doing nothing. But Irwin has his orders and won't disobey. Then they come across a debris field where Tyranid scavenger bioforms are sifting through the remnants, gathering material and biomass for reuse after having kicked the Adeptus Mechanicus' metal butts. The Space Marines are clearly up for some close-quarter combat, but failing that, a void battle will do, I guess. There's some banter with the serviles that crew the ship, and the captain commits to 3 waves of torpedoes fired from at the very limits of their range to eradicate the Xenos. They move into range, the Tyranids open up, but the nukes vaporize everything. The retaliation is taken out or absorbed, and so they translate back to the warp. However, amongst that retaliatory strike was a little pod. And this bit was really interesting because it goes into the composition of a Tyranid beastie. So apparently, the Imperium previously thought that the hive mind was a more rudimentary intelligence, bestial, simple drives, instinct and such, and this massive underestimation of it, well, it cost them greatly in the early time when the Tyranids had just arrived in the galaxy. The hive mind has emotions, but they are so vast that they are incomprehensible to humans. Are the various hive fleets actually separate, or are they like fingernails on a hand, just facets of the same single massive organism and singular consciousness? They strip welds, and each life form, each genetic strand they consume is repurposed, allowing the Tyranids to constantly evolve and change, adapting, empowering, overcoming. This delivery organism, an organic breaching pod, is like a colony. There's creatures that release gas to propel and steer it, other beasts that provide senses, visual info, others that monitor, and then there's the occupant itself. All of them are under the will of the hive mind while performing their singular contribution to this gestalt collection of bioforms. The pod gets through the void shields without detection and reaches the hull, where it grabs hold and then using a slug-like foot oozes along and finds a good spot to hide. Then it excretes glues to make sure it is stuck fast in position so the lictor inside can do its thing. Cool! Is this going to go all like Alien style, and instead of the Nostromo we'll have the Splendid Pinion with the Space Marines trying to hunt down and kill the invisible alien predator sneaking around killing people, made all the more difficult because it'll use its feeder tendrils to steal thoughts and information so it can stay ahead of the hunt and the efforts to take it out. Dante is overseeing the establishment of defences around the fortress monastery on Baal itself. There's some awesome descriptions of the place and of the scale of the effort being undertaken. Comparisons that this is what the Legion must have looked like in history past, and they get all melancholy that they might well be looking on something similar to what their Primarch actually saw when he oversaw the Legion. As they've begun digging trenches, they've stumbled across ruins from the Dark Age, buildings and relics from before the Fall that are useless. Kind of reminds me of that Stargate episode 2001, where the local farmers come across what they call Iron Root, which are ruins from their former advanced civilization. Anywho's, they do come across a monster wall that was deep beneath the sand, forgotten about until they started digging, and that's going to be something handy in the defence. But Dante is pragmatic, and isn't stoked like some others, because he still knows the scale of the threat coming their way. And then we are with Mephiston himself, Chief Librarian of the Blood Angels. He's in the deep sleep thing in his sarcophagus, this being something that helps them keep the Red Thirst and Black Rage at bay, regular periods of this rest lowering its potency. Now, when you're in this state, you don't dream, but Dante has this vision. There's images of Cadia falling, an Inquisitor coming back. The vision is coming from an Eldari, and so it's clear this is all stuff from the resurrection of Guilliman and that insufferable Prat Abaddon slamming a Blackstone fortress into Cadia. So he comes out of it, and like any dream, it is immediately starting to fade from memory. So he grabs his equerry, and together they try and grab what fading images they can. And they get something that greatly disturbs both of them. And so they request an urgent and immediate audience with Dante. Then we are back with the Splendid Pinion. It is with a task force from the Angels Numinous under the overall command of another captain, Captain Asante of the Blood Angels on the battle barge Blade of Vengeance. And while this dude is highly regarded as this awesome voidsman, they see that he has seriously fumbled the ball. The Tyranids were moving on a weld after receiving a distress call. The Angels Numinous turn up and enact the Inquisitor Cryptman tactic, so I guess we're around the Octaris conflict as well, of committing exterminatus with cyclonic torpedoes, so when the Tyranids arrive they have naught but a dead weld. The hive mind is a tad pissed and goes after the Imperial fleet that stole its much needed noms. The hive fleet engages and it's a full-on ruck, just like the Angels of Death rumble. And just like in that, you get a sense of scale of the battle barge that is the flagship of the task force and the bioships it faces. Now, as the Space Marines try to extract from the fight, Captain Irwin spots that they are leaving a ship behind. The Staff of Light is a strike cruiser that is falling further and further behind and is about to get shredded by the Tyranids. The captain of the task force has clearly slipped up and is forgetting about it, concerning instead on the main fleet. Irwin has been ordered to stay with this fleet, but the fleet is headed by a captain of a different chapter, and Irwin is a captain too, and so he isn't even outranked, and so is under no obligation to comply. So they fire up the engines and head straight for the Staff of Light. They swoop in and start blasting the Tyranids. Then they launch boarding torpedoes. The melters bore into the ship, and then explosive bolts throw open the hatches to clear debris and let the Angels deploy. They are assailed by Gaunts and then by Gene Stealers, but there's no human life or even remains to be found, which is odd. They carve through the foe and make for the command deck, where they find a lone sergeant and a navigator. Turns out the captain of the fleet wasn't blind to the Staff of Light's doom, it was intentional. A mechanical failure had damaged the warp drives, and so they evacuated the ship and were going to use it as a decoy. The sergeant stayed on board to make sure the servitors continued to keep it running, and the navigator has sworn to go down with his ship. Rather than let the ship be destroyed, they suggest that the Splendid Pinion open a portal into the Immaterium and the Staff of Light follow them in. They don't have warp drives, but they have Geller fields and a navigator, so they should be able to pull it off. They put the plan into action. A big Tyranid beastie grabs the ship with its tentacles and its beak gnaws on the prow. They think they're done for, but then there's a sudden lull. So they blow off some tentacles and start to translate. There's a nice icky description of when the shutters close and it smears the Tyranid remains along the glass. Then they swarm around the ship as others are splashed aside or implode as they meet the warp. And then the ships are out of battle and free from danger. The sanguinary guard standing outside say no one goes in until Dante's meeting has concluded. Now, we've got some cool descriptions of Mephiston, how although he is beautiful, he provokes discontent and horror rather than admiration, because you get a sense of what's behind the angelic face, his gaze, his manner, his aura, all spook even fellow Astartes. So even the sanguinary guard, even behind their eye lenses, they can't meet Mephiston's glare. And so they use a private vox to get hold of Dante, let him know that they are here, and, oh thank God for that, they are allowed in. So, they expose that a black crusade of unprecedented size is moving on Cadia, and it links to some of Sanguinius's prophecies and dreams that they have all been having, that they thought were just mental fluff, but might actually be genuine foresight. Dante gets miffed when they discover that a whole company involved with Cadia was psychically attacked and succumbed to the Black Rage, meaning that the Blood Angels chapter is at about half strength, and that it's just flat out wrong to be calling on successor chapters to come and defend the homeworld when they are sending troops into a distant fray to help that faraway world. Dante wants to focus solely on the preservation of Baal. Dante asks Mephiston to come back later, which is cool with him as he wants to confirm some things. In orbit, more and more ships are arriving, so much so that they are now having to somewhat jockey for position, and of course they all want to be close to the world upon which their gene father was found. Even in the grim darkness of the far future, there are still front row tickets. And so it seems that there are massive differences and variances in the successor chapters. Some have become almost perverse, having fallen far from their gene sire, while others are much closer to what the Primarch intended for his sons to represent. The Fortress Monastery is like a spiritual home to all of them. For those who have strayed from the ways of Sanguinius, it is a reminder of what they have lost, what they can reclaim, what they can once again strive to become. because Sanguinius fought for and indeed gave up his immortal life to save the Imperium and humanity. So he casts one hell of a pious shadow across his sons, one that is impressed upon the Astartes even harder in proximity to Baal itself. The book even refers to him as the Emperor's noblest son. Those Astartes who are closer to the tenets of Sanguinius see Baal and enter an almost ecstatic state upon seeing it. Some are even brought to tears to see the homeworld of their gene father. Back in the void, the captain at the head of the task force contacts Erwin and orders him over to explain himself. Erwin is all like, "Oh, I'll come over for a chat, but you can only ask me, not order me."
You're not the boss of me.
His second, Ackerman, suggests washing the alien gore out of his armour first, but that kind of defeats the purpose Erwin intends for his visit. Plus, Ackerman will be coming along as well, and they are going to tool up as well. So, all this helps explain a few important things. It seems that the chapters of Astartes are pretty much autonomous. No one really tells them what to do. Each chapter does its own thing under the command of a chapter master, and under them are the captains, who also largely operate on their own initiative, answering only to their chapter master, and certainly not anyone from another successor chapter, regardless of rank, and most goddamn definitely not from Astartes from another chapter, and obviously definitely not from some mortal. And so there's hundreds of captains on planet used to doing their own thing and not being told what to do. And so organisation of the overall effort is a disaster.
It's like watching a bunch of retards trying to fuck a doorknob out there.
On Baal, it may look like a legion from back in the day, as Dante and the boys remarked, but it is totally fractured and without a command structure. Dante may be the oldest and be the chapter master of the founding chapter, but he doesn't outrank any other chapter master. This is a real problem. The Tyranids operate as one, selflessly, without pause. A fractured Astartes force is going to be a real liability. So Erwin is taking a Thunderhawk over to the battle barge, and it's a vessel that was once of the first of its class, dating back to the heresy, so it's been taking everything the universe can throw at it for 10,000 years. There's all this ornate art things and architecture that is actually used to conceal the damage from all the millennia of combat. They used the cool phrase, dueling scars on a beautiful female warrior. The latest scars are from bioplasma, claws and acid, but you can see older wounds beneath even these. Anyways, Erwin appears before Asante and they banter. Erwin has to keep telling him that he does not outrank him, cannot order him to do diddly, and has no authority over him whatsoever. Asante is riled because they have just slaughtered 50 million people. This isn't a war of victories, it's a war with various degrees of failure. People looked up and saw the Blood Angels come to deliver them from the Tyranids, and instead they were attacked by their supposed saviours. But Erwin is more of the thought that these people were going to die anyway, and exterminators spared them the most diabolic form of slavery ever seen. Now that's good. Being turned into reinforcements for an enemy that will devour all life if it can. Ouch! Nice turn of phrase there, Erwin. I like Asante's empathy, but I admire Erwin's pragmatism. This tense exchange is really enlightening, because as they were flying over, the book mentions swarms of Thunderhawks and other transports going to and fro as the various chapters send over emissaries to reinforce old ties and allegiances and try and forge new ones. I just didn't realise how almost feudal the Space Marine system was. Even successor chapters, they have rivals, grudges, suspicions, allegiances and enmities, and that's just the Sons of Sanguinius. It must be brutal between, I don't know, things like the Ultramarines and the Imperial Fists. I mean, it makes sense. I now see how the rumble between the World Eaters, pre-heresy, and the Space Wolves occurred. At the time it didn't seem plausible, but this exchange between two captains, two Sons of Sanguinius, really bring home how likely and if not inevitable it was. Erwin says Asante hasn't enough faith in his abilities, and Asante retorts that Erwin has too much faith in his, but he likes battles with the odds stacked against him.
I like those odds.
Asante then ponders why the Tyranids paused in their attack and suggests that Erwin has infiltrator organisms on his ship. to which Erwin scoffs at such a silly notion. And then we cut to the pod attached to his ship. The organisms are feeding the lictor all the data they can with regard to its mission, so it didn't actually pierce the ship, but has just been laying dormant. Which explains the pause. Keeping the lictor on mission was more important to the hive mind than destroying a single Imperial vessel. The colony aspect is explained again as the pod detaches and steers itself away and into the atmosphere, and one by one senses are lost as the bioforms responsible for providing said sense are burned away and killed. The pod hits the sand of Baal. The primary brain is mushed immediately. The secondary detaches and lives for just a few moments, wiggling its vestigial limbs before perishing. The lictor emerges, takes a few tentative steps, and then rushes off, doing the predator camouflage thing. So now it's on some assassination mission. Maybe Dante? Or maybe it's going to do some cranial feasting to gather intel for the approaching fleet. Stuff on defences, troop numbers, weak points, strong points and such. I'm intrigued to see what its mission actually is. Mephiston goes down into this secret vault where the Blood Angels keep all the nasty stuff. The cursed relics and weird things, bolters that never miss so long as you give them the blood of the innocent, banners from squads responsible for the most sickening crimes, swords that kill instantly but activate the Black Rage, the skulls of the homunculus of Baal, and other stuff that almost brought the chapter low. And then he comes across a librarian dreadnought who is guarding the place. He was the former chief librarian and was the motivating force behind the creation of this repository of fell, nightmarish and despicable things in the first place. He's massive in the room, and I was wondering how the hell he got in there then. But then the book lets you know that they dragged his sarcophagus in here on a sled and then assembled the dreadnought around him, so he cannot actually get out. He's in here as guardian for however long that lasts. So, he heads into a vault for all things chaos, stuff they can't dent or destroy. And there's this mutant Xenos that's been chained up for thousands of years. It's a psyker that once corrupted entire systems, and after some banter, Mephiston dives in and psychically explores. And he sees Kabanda, the bloodthirster that has been a pain in the balls for the Blood Angels since the heresy. Sanguinius fought it a few times, including before his fatal tangle with Horus. So, Mephiston pops over to see Dante and warn the Kabanda the Bane of Sanguinius may be coming back, even though he wasn't banished that long ago. But then there is, why would he be attacking us when we are at our strongest? But then there is the counter, that we are also at our weakest because we are all together and all the chapter differences create a friction he could exploit. So apparently, Khorne still hungers to have the Blood Angels under his thumb. I seem to recall something about the Blood God wanting Sanguinius and his sons rather than Angron and the World Eaters. To me, this makes sense. The World Eaters are just brutal, but it takes tech implants in the form of the Butcher's nails to make them proper cornate material. The Blood Angels with the Red Thirst are just naturally a better fit to convert to Khorne. Get them to embrace the Red Thirst and you have exemplary warriors in a frenzied state, whereas for the World Eaters, you'll have to wait while everyone gets fitted with the Butcher's nails, and you'll have holdouts and rebels and all sorts of other problems. But Sanguinius was too noble, too pure, too much of a Giga Chad, and so Khorne had to settle for Angron. Khorne has tried multiple times before to sway the Legion, but has always failed. But trying at the height of the Tyranid invasion, when everyone is literally fighting for their life, their world, their people, their home, and the home of their Gene Father, that might be the moment they could fall to the Blood God. And it's that terrorist thing. We have to succeed every time to stop them. They only have to succeed once.
On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0.
Dante has been around for thousands of years. He has watched the Blood Angels become more and more savage, the Imperium continue to lurch towards its end. To everyone, he is the golden beacon, this icon to look up to, but inside he is just in despair. He has to keep choosing the lesser of two evils, making the brutal decision with the best outcome even with the costs. Mephiston knows this, and so he tells Dante that he can deal with the demon, but only if you tell me to. So Dante orders him to take out the demon. No matter what the cost, And Dante growls through tight lips. Yes, no matter what the cost. Oh, this is going to be bad. What has Dante just unleashed? What is Mephiston planning on pulling here? I have a huge suspicion this is going to bite him squarely in the arse. So far in this book, even Exterminatus hasn't been trapped with this level of ominous gravity. And then there's a big meeting. Everyone in their different colours and different skin and emblems and decorations and tattoos, but everyone is united by the blood. And there's a fun line. They are drinking spiced wine adulterated with vitae. Ew, there's a nosebleed in my wine. Plus, a space marine has to try heroically to get drunk. With their enhanced anatomy, it just isn't easy, like what happened to Captain America.
Dr. Erskine said that this serum wouldn't just affect my muscles, it would affect my cells. Create a protective system of regeneration and healing, which means, I can't get drunk.
And then they bring out all the relics. The last feather of Sanguinius, the cup that took the last of his blood. Dante's wearing a death mask of Sanguinius with a single drop of the Primarch's blood in stasis on it, because they link us to the past. They remind us of Horus's treachery against his brother, and that might be the greatest hit their kind has ever taken. And they've been brought to the brink before. In fact, Dante himself has seen the chapter brought to the brink of extinction on no less than 3 occasions. Yeesh, no wonder he is so bloody down. To see Sanguinius' sons almost wiped out 3 times, the only thing left of their Primarch, but nothing apparently comes close to the moment when their gene father was killed. And then it gets worse for poor old Dante, because every few decades or centuries he sees yet another new threat appear to join the list of races that want to wipe out the Imperium. He was there to see the Necrons rise from their tomb worlds and start blasting everything with that green shit.
Oh no, you did not shoot that green shit at me!
When the Tau appeared and started offering the greater good, and then the first Hive fleet showing. It all seems so futile. Every few years another threat shows up. I feel very my cousin Vinny about this.
I swear to God, I do not need this right now, okay? I got a judge that's just aching to throw me in jail. An idiot who wants to fight me for $200. Slaughtered pigs. Giant loud whistles. I ain't slept in 5 days. I got no money, a dress code problem, and a little murder case, which in the balance holds the lives of 2 innocent kids. Not to mention your biological clock, my career, your life, our marriage, and let me see, what else can we pile on? Is there any more shit we could pile on to the top of the outcome of this case?
The moment you save the Imperium from an enemy, another new one blunders in to take over and have another go. So Dante gives his big speech, and they all start pounding the table and their chests chanting his name. But then Dante needs to know that they will all follow him without question, so he can do what needs to be done to prevent their eradication. Of course, some pipe up that of course they will follow him, but as we saw with the previous guys, there's a lot of "you ain't the boss of me" between the chapters, and he needs to be absolute Lord Commander, with full support from all the chapters if he is to pull this off. We need to be the Legion we used to be. No questions, no doubts. I say it, it's like it's direct from your chapter master. So there's going to be a vote, and of course there's those who subscribe more fully to the Codex Astartes, and that no person should have that power because of what happened last time. They call up a map of the Imperium, and it shows Hive Fleet Leviathan and its path, with worlds eaten and the decades it takes between noms, because apparently they can travel faster than light between galaxies, but are sublight when they are chewing their way through systems. So they speed up the footage by like a factor of 1,000, so you can see the movements over the decades, and it's clear that until 12 years ago they were going to miss the Red Star completely, but then it made a significant detour in its trajectory to come their way. The Tyranids are drawn to biomass-rich regions, so that for them to ignore far richer feeding grounds and head directly for Baal means this is basically personal. The Hive fleet wants the Blood Angels dead. This is a grudge? And then there's a fun bit of theorising. Is the Hive mind the souls of countless animals trapped between worlds? They haven't fully passed on, and so have merged and become this huge mass of just endless hunger. Is it a god? Is it a chaos god? Because it's one massive creature, it's both its strength and weakness. Because when the hive mind is absent, the creatures revert to their animalistic urges. So all the creatures of the swarm contribute to the hive mind. Each is a cell in the one huge body, which is why you can't beat it psychically. It's just too vast. Even the Emperor couldn't tangle with it. So, if you kill the physical creatures, each kill robs the hive mind of a tiny portion of its presence. So the source of victory is to just keep killing its creatures until there is no hive mind. So the plan to win is to kill every single Tyranid.
Bravo.
Okay, whatever. I mean, it's a plan. So, the Red Scar is being evacuated as best they can. The region is pretty barren, as is, but 40 worlds subjected to exterminatus isn't sitting well with Dante. But they need to weaken the Hive Fleet as much as possible before it reaches the chapter homeworld. Then, it'll be ravenous, starving, even more frenzied, and that might give them their shot. Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Tearers, a man cursed with dark celebrity. Oh, that's good. Nice turn of phrase. He's a foot taller than the average Space Marines, and they are sending the Gene Seed away with the Scouts, those Space Marines who have yet to graduate and get the black carapace. The Flesh Tearers are kinda hated by lots of other chapters, but wrath is better than despair, and Gabriel is concerned that sending away the Gene Seed does not inspire hope, even if it's a legitimate precaution to ensure the Blood Angels endure. But it does kinda look like we're planning on being defeated. Gabriel also states that 10 scouts cannot rebuild the Blood Angels, but Dante edifies him that the chapter has been reduced to that number on several occasions. Jesus, what the hell? I didn't know they could be reduced to that many and more than once. I know earlier they'd taken some heavy hits, but to less than 10 scouts, not even full Space Marines? Damn. The Flesh Tearers embrace the Black Rage. It's what they are. It defines them. And because of Dante's long years, Seth knows that Dante is more aware of it than any other, and so kind of admires him for handling it for so long. I remember back at the start of the Horus Heresy books with a World Eaters encounter. Khan is explaining that war is brutal and so needs to be as short as possible, otherwise it's starvation as supply lines are cut, disease as medical supplies run out and injuries mount, demolishing housing, so that's refugees and exposure, so the World Eaters operate the way they do to get it over with as quickly as possible. So the savagery of the World Eaters is basically trying to be humane, whereas the Flesh Tearers, well, they commit to the slaughter because, well, damn it's goddamn it's fun. Also, well, we don't have much choice. We just kind of get into it and can't stop. I can see Khorne's interest in these guys. Oh man, they went and held out. Okay, guess I'll take the World Eaters and Angron then. But oh, it would have been so sweet to have Sanguinius and those Flesh Tearers on my side. Seth gets really riled at being summoned, and Dante removes his mask. Now Seth doesn't like looking at the death mask, but man, he really doesn't like seeing Dante's real face. Old, hollow, drained, marked by endless conflict, and weighed upon by terrible decisions. Dante opens this reliquary, and it has a feather of Sanguinius as long as a man's arm, and it has never touched the ground. It was taken in air during the fight with Horus. What? Now I know your average Astartes is no match for the War Master at the height of his chaos-empowered self, but you dashed through and snagged a feather during the fight and didn't think to, oh, I don't know, even mount a suicide attack on Horus to maybe give Sanguinius the opening he needs to carve the fucker in half? Ugh. So, the Lictor is on the prowl, and the hive mind has consumed other species far more intelligent than man, and so even now the Lictor is slowly starting to hear the deafening roar of the hive mind as it draws ever closer. It's not the Lictor becoming aware of the hive mind, but rather the hive mind becoming aware of the Lictor, like a person feeling a limb. So there's a great big banquet with wine with just enough spiced blood to appease the red thirst and not provoke it. And the ship captains from earlier end up challenging each other to a duel because the fleet commander is all still so salty that Erwin disobeyed his orders. But still, you ain't the boss of me. It's not too first blood, it's more than that. But Dante says he's going to call it if it looks like it's going too far. They probe each other's guard, and there's a nice line. Their swords speaking in quick metallic sentences. Ooh, I do like me some swanky phrases. And another one. Through the argument of swords, this enmity is banished. The fleet commander wins and asks if Erwin will obey him now. Erwin reminds him that if my chapter master told me to, I would, and he has. This fight has nothing to do with that. The Angels Vermilion show up. Now this causes a bit of a stir, because 500 years ago, Dante himself issued a ban on them coming to Baal, but never said why. Only a couple of people know, and they ain't saying. It might be something to do with these guys deliberately slaughtering civilians to preemptively deal with the Red Thirst. Yeesh, wipe out the people to clear your head so you can fight more effectively. That's harsh. Now, the chapter master who instigated the practice was offed by the Necron ages ago, but the new guy has made it even more extreme and prolific a practice. But the ones who are here have come because they don't agree with the practice of, massacring civilians so you don't get distracted fighting the foe who has come for them. And they especially don't like that the new chapter master is making it more intense, which I don't know how he can make it any worse. Slaughtering the neighbouring settlements as well, carve up adjacent planets first, then the target world, then once every human within the system has been chopped up and fed on, then we get round to the actual fight we're supposed to undertake. Anyways, these rebel guys are here to offer their lives to earn redemption. They were specifically ordered not to answer the call, and every time they've passed through a system, the Tyranid's been waiting, and they've lost 2/3 of their forces to these ambushes. This also means that these are the last of the successor chapters that will be arriving. The shadow in the warp is here, blinding the astropaths. That's it. No more reinforcements. No more comms. This is it. Dante addresses everyone. A broadcast to the planet, the moons, everyone all at once. You've given your sons to bolster our chapter, and we have defended you. But now a threat of such magnitude is here that everyone who can carry a weapon has to do so, or you'll be executed. Because we either all live, or we all perish. And then these cargo containers come in loaded with las guns that they start chucking out. People whinge, some are given a bit of a kick in, but Dante ain't wrong. There's no sitting on the sidelines against the Tyranids, hoping you emerge victorious. You take a gun and you stand fucking post, and you shoot until the battery or you are dead. Then we are back with the Flesh Tearers, and these utterly massive ancient orbitals that have crashed into the planet and look like a mountain range. They've been eroded by the weather, and so there are foothills and mountain streams, making them seem almost natural in a way. This local kid from a civilian tribe tells Seth that you need to come see something, and so they spend yonks climbing through the wreckage and eventually emerge onto this plateau. So this is interesting. The Flesh Tearers' unusually high susceptibility to the Red Thirst and the Black Rage is so acute that it bleeds over into the machine spirits of their vehicles, so that they plunge recklessly into battle, and so the Flesh Tearers are always a bit short on vehicles because they tend to get destroyed. Dude, being chased around by a possessed 1958 Plymouth Fury? Ew, scary. Being assailed by a Land Raider in the grip of the Red Thirst seeking blood but without a mouth? How about a Predator in the grip of the Black Rage, every monitor inside flashing with hazy images of Horus as it goes berserk? Damn. The plateau has Thunderhawks from the Knights of Blood, a chapter even more homicidal than his own, to the extent that they aren't trusted and are persecuted wherever they go. A Land Raider rumbles over and squares off against Seth, before a knight emerges to let him know that Dante sent them here to reinforce and bolster the Flesh Tearers' lines. They are starting to establish fortifications, but there are just so many tunnels that it's an impossible task. But the only other option is to just dive into the enemy when they show up. Now, the Knights of Blood are more affected by the Red Thirst than the Black Rage, and along with the curse of their Primarch being more prominent, along comes the gifts of Sanguinius in similar prominence as well, so much so that they can actually feel the hunger of the Tyranids, and it's growing as the fleet draws ever closer, so they now know they only have a couple of days at most. They ask the kid to tell the tale of how the orbitals were brought down, and so much time has passed, it is now basically a mythical tale handed down through the generations and distorted, that the gods smote them and such. The Knight of Blood promises to tell the true story of what happened to them if he will take them to this room deep within the heart of the orbitals. Seth joins them, even though he gruffly doesn't want the reinforcements, let alone Knights of Blood, because they are even more of a liability than his own troops, that he has really had to work hard to keep in line. So, this room has walls adorned with the story. Baal Primus used to be a paradise, and then the fall came. One moon wanted the orbitals to protect them because they had the most population, while the other wanted them because they had more martial ability. The Knight of Blood has a theory that they scuttled them to stop them being taken over, and as they fell, they devastated the planet, leaving it in the state in which it remains today. Standard atomics can leave a place irradiated for decades, but these mountain-sized structures have left the planet irradiated for millennia. So out of the blue, the Knight of Blood crushes the neck of the kid and offers Seth to join in drinking from him to seal their pact of brotherhood in battle. Seth is not pleased. This casual slaughter of civilians is why the knights are so reviled, but the red thirst is up, but Seth won't demean himself by drinking from the murdered kid, as he says he prefers to feed unobserved and heads off. Yay, go Seth! And then we're with this salty space marine, because he feels that those who have succumbed to the Black Rage should be tended to and allowed to die. But Dante is bringing them all together. Chaplains are using litanies to keep them just barely under control, and they are being loaded up with armour and decorated with the iconography of the Death Company. They are going to be used as shock troop cannon fodder, and this space marine is not happy with such a fate for their brethren. More that they are a disgrace to their kind and should be hidden away and killed, rather than from any disrespect from using them in such a manner. The massive doors are starting to close, and as they are restrained, they start to succumb once more, and there's all these howls and cries of horrors.
You bastards! I'll get you for this!
And the doors close. Right. Up with the Master of the Fleet, the thirst for battle is one of the worst hungers the Blood Angels can know, and it is so overwhelming that his angel's teeth are starting to extend. A servitor pipes up that he has detected a ship. No, correction, hundreds of ships. Nope, wait, make that thousands. Actually, wait a minute, another correction, make that tens of thousands. The Tyranids start making landfall, raining down Tyrannocytes, gun batteries open up and try and blast them from the sky. But then comes the seething wall of gaunts, trampling over each other as they surge forth, and the defenders are trying to keep them away from this trench they've dug, and then turned into a moat with rockcrete. The moat is filled with a life form that nobody really knows where it came from, whether it is indigenous to Baal, some chaos beastie, or if it's extraterrestrial. Anyway, it's called thirst water. It looks like normal H2O, but when you come into contact with it, it instantly desiccates you, stealing and devouring every scrap of moisture. Everyone on Baal knows about this silent killer and how to avoid it, but the Tyranids are blissfully unaware of what it is and what it does, so they've gathered up every bit of it that they can find and poured it into the rockcrete moat, and then covered it over to conceal it. The people of Baal keep laying on the lasfire and begin to steadily retreat, hoping to coax the Tyranids into a charge right into the trap. But then they stop, even as the blood of their fallen emerges from their lines and trickles towards the trench. The wall of gaunts are just immobile. A chaplain then notices one gaunt in particular. There's something in its eyes, a ghastly massive intelligence. You can literally see the hive mind in there, using it like a puppet, scoping out the scene, wondering why, if the Imperials fought so hard to defend this bit of land, they are now giving it up so readily. The whole entirety of the hive mind is right there in front of him, not using a hive tyrant or a swarm lord, but a little, single, humble Hormagaunt. The chaplain acts quick and drills the gaunt, breaking the spell, snapping synapse just for a moment, and the bestial instincts of the swarm take back over, and they gallop forward straight into the trap, and as soon as they fall in... Yep, they fall in and just rise up as bones. I didn't know they had skeletons. I thought they were more exoskeleton and insect-like. Good to know. They just keep coming, wave after wave after wave, and they fall in, rise up as bones and chitin, and then the thirst water continues and turns them into dust, as every molecule of moisture is stripped away. The losses are mind-bogglingly huge, and eventually the Gaunts stop and start to retreat. A huge cheer goes up from the defenders. Even if it's just a respite rather than a victory, it's still something, so they embrace it and jump around and party. The librarians are a little less jubilant and are getting rather concerned because the Tyranids are literally at the gate, and in the Citadel Mephiston has gone into a trance, and they are all like, hey, Mephiston can wake up any time now, getting kind of dodgy out there. Apparently, the longer he is under, the harder it is to rouse from these trances, and he is already treading the warp at the worst possible time.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
With the shadow in the warp raging, he's in real danger. Well, it's danger no matter what, but now it's super duper dangerous. Mephiston wakes up and says to prepare Thunderhawks, prepare them now. So all the librarians with a small contingent of veterans as bodyguards march for the craft, and they scream into the skies and barge through the void shields, and right away the aerial swarms start pouring their way, pitch black style. But there's so many of them that the bodies are starting to clog the intakes. So Mephiston drops the rear ramp and just steps out. He uses psychic power to fly around, and he drops a massive lance of psychic fury forwards, ripping apart the gargoyles and clearing a path before flying back in. He just about makes it, drained by the effort of his deed, but they have managed to clear a path through the swarm. They fly for these mountains, which is the location where they mine bloodstones, which are highly significant to the Blood Angels and the successor chapters. They have incredible meaning that they hide from all outsiders, even as they adorn their armor and other relics with them. Bloodstones are psychically resonant, and as the librarians go into this huge cavern that was excavated to mine them, they enter the series of tunnels that were also discovered pre-existing before the mine. The Bloodstones reinvigorate the librarians, and even Mephiston perks up and no longer needs to lean on others, as the stones empower him back to full might. They stroll boldly through the tunnels, their psychic presence causing the stones to light up, and they even regenerate. When the armor of the librarians scuff or scrape the walls and break the stones, they begin to heal and regrow. They even spot a servitor encased in them. Mephiston then finally reveals why they are here. The bloodthirster that's after them, Umbongo or whatever it is called.
Way down deep in the middle of the Congo, a hippo talking every caught the grover on the mango. He stuck it with the others and he danced a dinky tango. The rhino said, I know, we'll call it Umbango.
So while the Tyranids are the greatest threat to the body of the Imperium, Chaos is still the biggest threat to its soul, and Umbongo is still fanatic to convert the Blood Angels to the service of Khorne, again adding additional weight to the theory that the Blood Gods settled for the World Eaters. His true chosen chapter was the Blood Angels. They all drink blood to fuel their powers and rip a path into the realm of Khorne itself, where Cabana Boy is finishing off the last of its rivals to earn the right to head through a portal and make its attack on Baal and try and seduce the sons of Sanguinius into the arms of Chaos. Mephiston squares off against him. The Bloodthirster attacks, raining blows down on Mephiston while trying to recruit him. One of the librarians falls and the ritual collapses, allowing Cabana Boy to dive through the portal, and results in a massive psychic shockwave. Half of the librarians are killed instantly, the other half will never be the same again. Some tear off their own faces to beat on the skulls beneath because of the demonic fury they were washed over with. The news gets even worse because the tunnels also collapse, so it's going to take them absolutely ages to dig their way out. In space, things aren't going well either. Hit and run tactics are working, but the losses that Astartes sustain are mounting. The Angels Excelsis and many other chapters are just destroyed, utterly. Meanwhile, on the surface, the Lictor is doing its thing. Trigons digging tunnels, then using acid to melt through metal defenses, and then they are through. Gene Stealers pour in, and they make for the Hall of Sarcophagi, where the chapter's aspirants are sleeping, slowly being transformed into Astartes. The thirst water is finally sated, and the Tyranids start crossing the defense, forcing the defenders to fall back as the next generation of Space Marines is put in mortal jeopardy. Whew. Dante jumps on a bike and rides into combat. The Gene Stealers have the advantage because the Space Marines can't risk using heavy weapons and bolters for fear of hitting the slumbering, helpless aspirants. Basically, if they open up and kill the Tyranids, the chapter is doomed. If they hold back, the Gene Stealers kill everyone, and the chapter is doomed. Yikes. Seeing the sarcophagi smashed is devastating for Dante, like a father seeing his children killed. He knows he's going to have to fight his way through, but doesn't know what he'll be by the time he does. Will the thirst or the black rage possess him utterly from the grief he feels? He is clearly expecting to die here. He switches his mask to maximum and bellows, creating a sound that would have ordinary humans dropping to their knees in terror, but it is buffeting against the will of the hive mind itself, and so it only causes a momentary pause. But that's an advantage he takes well advantage of. He is slaughtering the foe, but they are just too numerous, and slowly, as he starts to tire, they are successfully bringing him down. Then a voice booms, "Lord Dante, get down!" And he hits the deck as assault and autocannon roar. He chokes the life from a Gene Stealer, and when he stands up, there are 3 dreadnoughts with smoking weapons standing in the doorway. And they are choked with emotion and lamenting that they could have gotten here quicker, and to see 30 Space Marines dead and so many sarcophagi smashed or torn up by weapons fire. And so it turns out that Dante figured this was a distraction, that the Tyranids were going to go for this place to make the Blood Angels pull back in panic to defend it, and thereby leave the Void Shields exposed. So he made sure to bolster the forces there, but as a consequence, it meant the sarcophagi were left underdefended. Again, the harsh decisions he has to make, weighing down on him again and again. So, he not only needs an apothecary, but a tech as well, because his armour is all busted up. Dante checks in and tells them to recover the Gene Seed, and he hears what is as close to panic as he has ever heard from an Astartes. "My lord, the Void Shields are down." You see, the Lictor was watching the fight, watching the prey fire their refined mineral spines at its brood. The reinforcements that Dante diverted to the Void Shields have stopped the attack dead in its tracks. Undaunted, it then continues and makes a move on the Void Shield generator, which was its mission all along. I really thought it was on an assassination run, like for Dante on Mephiston. Not a sabotage mission, but okay, makes sense. It can squeeze its body down to the size of its head like a cat. Well, maybe not mine, but anyway, the conduits are still too small, so it just rips off its upper arms. The architect of its design left pain receptors intact, but it just ignores the agony because this has to be done. The hive mind has called for it. The Lictor has a fun ponder. Like so many other prey species, the humans change the world around them to suit them, unlike the Tyranids that change and adapt to suit their surroundings. Its own blood lubricates its passage as it wriggles down towards the Void Shield generator. While it was in the desert, it had been growing these cyst things, which it now activates. They burst and mix these fluids that individually do nothing, but when mixed, it basically creates xenomorph blood. So as the Lictor is dissolving, it pours itself over the generator, and it has an adaptation that lets its brain live on after death, and it uses this to broadcast a signal and communicate its success to the hive mind. It feels no pride, no joy, no elation in its victory. It did it because that is what it was created to do. Like in Deep Space Nine, when we get this Klingon role about fighting the Jem'Hadar.
Ah, but you can respect a Cardassian, because he fights for his people, and he follows a code just like we do. But not the soldiers of the Dominion, not the Jem'Hadar. No, They don't fight for anything. They fight because they're designed that way. Because they're programmed to fight.
And this starts a chain reaction that could threaten everything. The only way to stop it is to reduce power by 60%, and this storm of Vox broadcasts come flooding in to try and find out what the fuck is going on. Dante orders the void shields lowered to stop the catastrophe. With the void shields down, the aerial assault commences and suddenly the comms net erupts. It's like how Michael Scott marks his emails.
So everyone marks them urgent.
Okay, you know what? I mark it urgent A, urgent B, urgent C, urgent D. Urgent A is the most important. Urgent D you don't even really have to worry about.
Every single Vox is ultra urgent and they have to fall back to the second line and the Arx Angelica. Gabriel Seth is actually at peace. I thought that meant he was dying, but nope, it's because he's in the thick of it, just slicing and dicing with alacrity. He has Blood Reaver, his chain axe, swinging it around, filling the air with a red mist as nothing can get within 6 feet of him. He is just in psycho heaven. No civilians to worry about accidentally killing, an endless swarm of enemy, he can just let go and rock the rage. He doesn't even have to worry about his men, because for 2 centuries he has tried to get them to rein it in. But here, now, have at it lads, just go for it and have fun and revel. Demolish absolutely everything around you. Astro-Wrath is steering the Death Company into the foe, using them like a weapon, aiming them into critical areas where their ferocity serves them well. His skill at tactics and deployment means they are surviving far beyond expectations, but each evening there are fewer and fewer of them. And as the fight goes on, other Marines are donning the black as they succumb to the Black Rage, the stress and fatigue pushing them over the edge. But bolts are running out, lives are running out, time is running out. This is illustrated even more when they see the feeder tendrils reaching down from the bioships and capillary towers rising up to meet them. The consumption of the planet is already underway. It feels like the war is a foregone conclusion. The attack is just a distraction, a triviality, as the Hive Fleet gets on with its actual goal of devouring Baal. So Gabriel Seth is pulling his forces back and his chaplain is a little miffed. He feels this war cannot be won, so at least let's go down hacking and slashing. We'll take it to the High Chaplain then. Well, I would, but he joined the Death Company 2 days ago and is dead. I'm the literally last chaplain of the Flesh Tearers, and while I'm griping, Dante sent us to this moon. Well, it's a disservice. They should be on Baal, fighting and dying there. But Seth's priority is to the Feather and the Gene Seed, and not only the survival of the Flesh Tearers, but of all the sons of Sanguinius. The casualties all over have been massive, especially to the civilians assigned to the various chapters, and especially the Knights of Blood, and very few of those casualties were caused by the Tyranids. Eep. So, the Tyranid's living ammunition. It recognises other Tyranids and doesn't activate. Basically, it effectively prevents friendly fire, unless it's acid spray and such. But for things like the Rupture Cannon and Flesh Borer Beetles, they fly forth, detect Tyranids in their path, and just don't devour or pop. Seth tries to rein in the Knights of Blood and their head honcho Centaur, but they are just gone. He is not going to die like a beast at the behest of the Fury and wants his death to count for something. And so he holds high the reliquary, and as the light catches it, it suddenly snaps them all from their mania, bringing them back to normal, and Seth tells Centaur to bring in his ships and evacuate them to Baal so he can bring the Feather to where it should be and they can fight and die on sacred soil. So, back with Dante as he ponders things. Hive Fleet Behemoth was a mere showling compared to Leviathan, and that is how McCragg managed to beat back and defeat the Tyranids assailing them. But here, chapter after chapter are falling. Not individual casualties, but entire chapters. Dante is all mad at himself because of his hubris. Oh, if the Ultramarines could beat back the Tyranids, then how could the Sons of Sanguinius not manage the same, despite it being hundreds of times bigger? Companies are being reduced to squads, squads reduced to individuals who just find somewhere to dig in and defend and ready to sell their lives as dearly as they can. So for his supposed hubris as penance, Dante decides to step out and defend this big open area, the hardest to defend. A group of captains meet and Dante finds out the areas that were supposed to be held have actually fallen. Turns out the captains tried to send runners to inform them on being overrun, they just didn't make it. so there are these huge gaps in what the situation actually is. Knowing now that it is even more desperate than they thought, the plan is to grab all the supplies they can and fall back to the central keep where they can hopefully hold out for months until help arrives. If it ever does. Man, at this point, this story was really getting to me. It's tragic. They are just getting hammered relentlessly, and every time they get a small victory, a larger defeat immediately follows. They are fighting as hard as they can, but there's just too many of them. And so, suddenly there's this strange presence in the air. Is it the Tyranids? Is this some new variant of the Shadow in the Warp? Mortal men fall to the ground in agony. Space Marines drop and grunt in pain. Psychers wail in anguish. The Astropaths, or mostly they all just die instantly. Librarians shatter their teeth with the strength of their convulsions as they react to the effect. While the Blood Angels carry a tiny shred of their Primarch's psychic power, making them vulnerable to this weird psychic pulse, the Tyranids are even more vulnerable. This blanket effect literally erases synapse. Each and every Tyranid bioform is suddenly isolated and separated, and the book decrees that for the first time in its existence, the hive mind actually tastes death. Trillions of its bodies are separated from its control, and tens of millions perish as their brain stems melt into mulch from the psionic shockwave. Mephiston is knocked out, others have their whole memory erased. Everything. However, on the moon at the relay, 3 astropaths actually survive. Well, for a bit anyway. The third has to be strangled because she couldn't keep it together after surviving the blast wave. The Shadow in the Warp has been disrupted. There is a chance to send out a signal, a call for help. The more experienced one is going in alone. Despite his protests, the newbie is being put in a pod to shelter him from the resulting backwash. The astropath doesn't expect to live, but they need to get a message out and seek assistance from the Imperium before Baal falls. The warp is in turmoil, but he sees a light, not the Astronomicon, but definitely something calm and friendly. So he begins to move towards it, and immediately becomes aware that he is being followed. Well, not followed so much as stalked, hunted. It's sniffing at the edges of his soul. When he enters the light, he sends a simple message wreathed in runes of urgency and such. Save Baal. And then whatever it is that's been moving on him pounces and destroys him utterly. The book doesn't say who it is, but it's got to be Cabanaboy. We are with the successor chapter called the Carmine Blades on Baal Secundus, who have a Native American kind of tribal side to them. They call astropaths sky talkers. They have wild gods, and one of them is recalling how he used to be this tribal dude on their feral world, running around skinning people and such. Sounds like the Comanche. If you want a wild ride of a book, I can thoroughly recommend Empire of the Summer Moon. Anywho, this guy is now chapter master, and 50 times the Tyranids have attacked the Astropath relay, and 50 times the Carmine Blades have beaten them back, but each time they have lost more of their lodge brothers. And then the sky goes Hellraiser 2 and becomes a raging storm as Cabanda starts to punch through into the material world. Meanwhile, after 10,000 years, that annoying gimp Abaddon slams a black foam fortress into Cadia and opens the Great Rift, cutting the galaxy in half. Millions of worlds are consumed, alien races who have never known human or chaos are wiped out. Wow, I didn't realise how huge this thing was. I thought it was just a big tear that makes crossing it tricky and allows demons and such to manifest a little easier. I had no idea of the sheer scale or the devastation this rift caused. When it happened in Rise of the Primarch, it seemed significant, but not this level of disastrous. Apparently, Mephiston's fight with Cabanaboy did more damage than it first appeared. He cannot fully create a material form, and because the warp storms have not reached Baal, he cannot manifest directly on the planet, and so he appears in the void of space. Vacuum can't harm him, but he is now bound by material constrictions, like atmosphere being needed for his wings to work. So he is flapping around like a chump, getting nowhere, and he is now super pissed at Mephiston. But he's brushing up against the gravity well, and is starting to be drawn inexorably in. And then a bit that really made me laugh. As Cabanaboy is drifting down towards the planet, it takes in the view. The bioships are all convulsing and screaming because of the loss of synapse, And he's all like, oh, check out the size of those skulls. So big, so very, very big. So Commander slams into the ground and skulls pour out of the cracks as the skulls of all the dead all over the battlefield rip themselves free of their bodies and start rolling towards him. And they all start to pile up, creating this massive tower with a stairway curling around it. The tower reaches up to a hole in the sky, and from this rent pours forth the legions of Khorne. The blood god's presence washes out across the land, provoking the red thirst and causing the black rage. Thunderhawks are coming in, so the Knights of Blood opt to sacrifice themselves so that the flesh tearers can get off the moon. The Knight squares off against Cabana Boy, who tries to seduce him into turning to Khorne, telling him that they are the same.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Ours is the holy rage of Sanguinius, not the mindless butchery of Khorne, and so he charges him. Now, with Synapse gone, there's a void to fill, and yep, the rage of the blood god pours into the vacuum of the Tyranids. They become frenzied, turning on anything around them. Even some space marines succumb and turn on each other. But because of what Mephiston did, their time has been greatly curtailed, and they are already starting to fade out and be sent back to the Immaterium. Okay, time out. So what was the plan here? What the hell were they trying to accomplish? You mount your incursion, get a few Blood Angel skulls, a nice chunk of Tyranid ones. Cabana tries to convert a knight, the most bloodthirsty of all the chapters, and so likely the single most likely to flip, and the knight tells it to get bent. What were they trying to achieve? I mean, I doubt the Blood Angels are going to whinge. I mean, this assault may have given them a little momentum to actually stand a chance of beating back the Tyranids. So, in effect, the Khornate attack has done nothing save possibly save the Sons of Sanguinius. Is that the intention? Does Khorne want the Blood Angels that much? The Blood God wants to recruit them to his side so vehemently that he'd intervene to save them from certain death. Again, the Blood Angels have to resist every single time to succeed, but Khorne only needs to succeed in his seductions one time and they are his forever. If the Tyranids wipe them out and consume them, he gets no more shots at recruitment. So did Khorne just save the Blood Angels? Cabana Boy tried to flip one, failed. Okay, let's learn from that. Refine our argument and try again with a new line next time. Just keep chipping away and one day we'll hit that perfect argument at just the right time and bingo. And that just has to suck for the World Eaters. There you are, fighting for Khorne, blood for the blood god, skull for the skull throne. Wait, where you going, boss? I have to save the Blood Angels from the Tyranids. Well, but what about us? Aren't we your favourites? Sure, whatever, I'll be back in a mo. Facing annihilation, the Blood Angels choose to try and remove the head of the swarm. That way the fleet might be weakened to an extent that might save other worlds down the line. It's not much of a victory, but it looks like the only one they'll be able to claw from this massacre. Anyway, all the Death Company in the tower are unleashed, even the very worst of them. The ones whose gene seed has become corrupted and turned them into giant lumbering monstrosities. Blood Angels? They have something akin to Chaos Spawn or Rat Ogres? Man, can we get those in the game? That'd be awesome. Basically like Astartes on Formula. They herd them into the fray, and for the first time in 12 centuries, Dante actually lowers his resistance and embraces the rage and the thirst, and is initially rather concerned at how good it feels to let go, and the final assault on the Tyranids begins. Dante tries to home in on the Hive node. Synapse is returning, the Tyranids are again starting to fight coherently. Then Dante sees the Sanguinor, which over the last 10,000 years has manifested in the chapter's darkest moments. But it must be a hallucination because right now the agent of Sanguinius is at the Cadian Gate. Anyway, the hallucination, the Sanguinor, wherever it is, points downward, indicating an area of spore cloud being generated by Venomthrope. The Legion of the Damned pop up and start getting stuck in, and Dante begins hacking a path towards the cloud. He enters the cloud and he's now fighting Tyrant Guard, so either a Hive Tyrant or the Swarm Lord is in here somewhere. Dante bellows that he is not Sanguinius, he is Dante, and he snaps out of the Black Rage and stops seeing Horus and sees what he is truly fighting, the Swarm Lord itself. He uses his jump pack to bounce around and damages an arm. The Swarmlord just cuts it off to get it out of the way. Dante shatters a bone saber, and the Swarmlord just crams the busted weapon into Dante, cutting through his secondary heart and out of his back. Dante starts blasting it point blank in the face, but his armor is starting to shut down. His life is failing. The Swarmlord perishes and Dante lies dying. Thinking on his 1500 years of service to the Emperor and to mankind, he doesn't regret a single day of it, because if he kept the darkness from humanity's door just for another year, another day, then it has all been worth it. And he finally achieves peace as he dies. Yeah, so that happened. That was a thing this book just did. Dante died. Then Dante sees Sanguinius, his eyes full of sorrow, his tears falling onto Dante's face. He tells him that no one has given as much for the Empire, for humanity, as you. And I could give you the release of death, give you final peace, and bring you to my side, but I need you to do more. Dante pleads with his Primarch to let him die, but he awakes. He is in his body, being attended by apothecaries, and he notices a number of unusually large Astartes around the room. Dante is informed that these are the unnumbered sons of Sanguinius, Primaris. Rather than explain what is going down, they praise the miracle and help Dante up, and escort him away. He sees more Primaris throughout the passages, and then Dante realizes why the golden sword of the Emperor was missing from his vision, because someone else has it. Rabute Guilliman on a throne of pure adamantium. Guilliman steps down, and Dante drops to his knees, to which Rabute tells him that in this age you have done so much that you alone have earned the right to speak to me as an equal. Never bow to me or show deference again, or I'll have to order you not to. Damn, okay. That's pretty intense and amazing. I'm sad for Dante because he lost his chance of peace, but he saw his Gene Father, and now he's getting a solid pat on the back from an actual Primarch. He asks for forgiveness. The fortress temple is in ruins, Baal has been devastated, thousands of Space Marines are dead. He tried his best. Guilliman says that there is nothing to forgive. He has done what no one else has ever managed. He has destroyed a major hive tendril. When the Indomitus Crusade arrived in system, the opening of the rift caused a distortion that allowed years to pass elsewhere, while just a few weeks passed on Baal. The Tyranids had suffered catastrophic losses. They were so depleted that they basically just needed a coup de grace. Dante has saved the entire sector. And at this moment, all his injuries, his burdens, all catch up with Dante, and he collapses. Don't you fucking dare die, dude. Come on, stay with us. And then we are with Luigi, who still fucking hates his boy for not measuring up, even though the lad saved his miserable ass twice during the fighting by pushing him out of the way of a lethal attack. Luigi's wounded but alive, and he's laying there with all the others waiting for treatment and getting pissed off that it's taking so long. Then he notices that they are taking away all the kids. And then a Blood Angel's apothecary shows up and checks him out, but also asks as to his son, what happened to him. So during the trials to become a Space Marine, he fell while climbing and took a head injury that resulted in brain damage that meant he was rejected. But they can repair this damage apparently. When they had recruits galore and a full-strength chapter, it wasn't worth the expenditure of time and resources. Just pick the next in line and move on. But with the population demolished, the chapters near extinction, the situation is a smidge different. The kid passed the first hurdle. He was compatible with the gene seed, and right now that makes him primo raw material. So they're going to repair the damage and induct him into becoming an actual angel. Luigi's son is going to become an angel. But then the apothecary notices that Luigi's infected. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. He's going to die a hideous death, or he's going to turn on the rest of them. So the apothecary holds his head and asks if he will accept the Emperor's mercy. And when Luigi says yes, he breaks his neck and he escorts his son away. Fuck you, book. Okay. The chapters are being remade with the infusions of Primaris, but not the Knights of Blood. They are too cursed to be resurrected. Now, we discover that the Primaris don't have the Black Rage. And when questioned about the Red Thirst, they are baffled by the notion, because they have no concept of it. So it looks like Belisarius Cawl has managed to remove the flaws from the gene seed. This makes Seth angry. When isn't he? But that's the exact point. These Primaris will be flesh tearers in name only. The flaw is what makes us who we are. We can draw on the thirst to do things that others cannot. These Primaris are ultramarines in red armor. It's removing the struggle and the burden, like in Angels of Death.
Our gift is a curse delayed, and nothing more.
Or Star Trek.
Damn it, Bones, you're a doctor. You know that pain and guilt can't be taken away with the wave of a magic wand. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain.
The Red Thirst and the Black Rage were what swung the war in their favour. These flaws were what gave them victory, what saved the sector and wiped out this tendril of Leviathan. The Death Company were instrumental in the victory. To remove these flaws is to remove what it means to be a son of Sanguinius. So then we have a bit that shows that the Primarchs are unexpectedly human, and more so because of it. They are the concentration of being human, and their presence is almost overwhelming because of it. Dante is meeting with Guilliman, and he is being asked to be Warden of the North of the Great Rift. Also, the way the Space Marines recruit has been a little harsh, and the people of Baal have suffered greatly. Surely now they should have something other than desperation and misery in giving up their sons for the chapter to look forward to. Guilliman asked Dante to tear down Kabanda's big honking skull symbol he left on the surface of the moon, demolish the symbol of arrogance and hubris, and teach the people of Baal what they stand for, what they are fighting for, what the Imperium means, make Baal a paradise again. And it's not a purely altruistic suggestion, because if the ruinous powers come calling to a miserable, desperate wretch and offer them something better, well, of course they're going to jump at it. It's not like things can actually get worse. So in a way, just making things better is the best way to fight chaos. Guilliman is counting on Dante to deliver on this. The Indomitus Crusade heads onwards, leaving orbitals and shipyards under construction around Baal. When everyone has left, Dante has Baal Primus bombarded to destroy Kabanda's symbol, and 10,000 Primaris echo the chant of for Sanguinius and the Emperor. Bloody hell, that was a ride of a book. I got a lot of cool insight into the Tyranids I never knew, and oodles on the Blood Angels and the successor chapters. Great characters, great story, oodles of fun. Not sure I can hold out. I may have to jump straight to the Siege of Terra. I've got to see Sanguinius in action. And if this siege was so riveting and moving, the finale of the Horus Heresy on Terra has got to be dynamite.